Hey guys, so I want to talk to you a little bit about Robert Rosenthal's experiment. I just put the video link next to this one, hopefully. The Pygmalion Effect. You watch the video, so you know that basically Rosenthal from Harvard concluded in his research, his findings were that there were four factors that tended to lead to this Pygmalion Effect. That is the self-fulfilling prophecy that if you essentially believe in someone or don't believe in them, conversely, that they'll kind of follow your lead. This is nowhere more important, I think, than in the setting that they conducted the experiment in education, because especially children take cues from adults, because of course adults are very believable to children, but as adults we take cues from people with more or higher status than us, for sure, and even people we just admire as peers. So there's a lot of people who influence what we believe about ourselves, and what we believe about ourselves definitely has implications for what we'll strive for, what we believe is possible. The Pygmalion Effect, as you recall, Rosenthal identified climate, the input, response opportunity, and feedback. I wanted to just expand on that a little bit, because I think if you believe in the power of the Pygmalion Effect in self-fulfilling prophecies, which is consistent with what McGregor said in his theory. If you look at the paragraph in your book talking about theory X, theory Y, McGregor, it says that McGregor stated that managers who subscribe to either theory will create a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the behavior of employees will eventually come to reflect a manager's beliefs. A self-fulfilling prophecy is when one person's expectations cause another person to act as originally expected. So Rosenthal found was very consistent with McGregor's theory X, theory Y assumptions about what you believe is what you get, essentially. What I want to talk to you about is the importance of being genuine in your tactics, in your presentation with others. You can truly believe in someone, but if they don't feel it, if they don't believe that you're genuine, then they'll reject that. In fact, it can have the opposite effect. I mean, if someone's encouraging you and you feel like they're manipulating you, if your coach is saying, oh, come on, you can do it, and you know they're just trying to drive you to higher performance, but they don't necessarily believe you can do it, then it's that's easily translated into resentment rather than encouragement. So if you're like me and you really believe in the power of positive expectations for other people, be careful not to play games with people, because not only will it be ineffective, but it will backfire on you. You'll find that rather than building a relationship of accountability with them, you'll destroy whatever relationship you have. Instead of good faith relations with them, you'll build bad faith relations. So keep that in mind. How do you then genuinely believe in someone and express that? Well, it takes a fair amount of self-monitoring, that is, being aware of how you're perceived by the other person. You have to look into their eyes and facial expressions and determine, is this person believing what I believe? Do they see my genuineness? Also, I think sometimes you want to believe in someone, but it's very difficult because they're not giving you a lot of evidence that they can do the task, they can accomplish it. What I do when I'm sitting talking with a student, a young person or something, or trying to encourage someone along the way, and I really know that my belief in them will help them, but I don't have a lot of information about it. One thing is, I talk with them. I try to gather more information so that I can genuinely encourage them through my belief in them. The other thing I do is I remember the many, many times in my own life when I accomplished things that most people didn't think I could do. I'm going to get off track for just a minute, but my educational background is really a consequence of a childhood where my father both abandoned me emotionally and really intellectually made me feel inferior. He was an engineer, and growing up I just had different instances where it became very clear that he didn't think that his son was too sharp. I remember one in particular. I lived in Denver, Colorado, Lakewood, Colorado, and we had all sorts of things. My dad was a successful engineer, and we had a Jeep and a boat and a camper, and he had all sorts of cameras and shotguns and things, toys. And we were traveling up to the mountains to go camping in our camper. And we were coming up this valley in the Rocky Mountains, and there was a peak on the left and a peak on the right. And I was sitting between the captain's chair, my dad's driving chair, and my mother's queen chair. And there was a big hump where the motor was, those old motor homes where there's the motors kind of sticking up between them. And the sun was just setting. And I remember asking my dad, "Hey, Dad, what holds the sun in the sky?" I don't know how old I was. I hope I was really young. My father passed away when I was 9, so it was well before that. And I don't honestly know how he answered. I doubt that he looked at me and said, "Son, I think you're stupid." But that's the message I got. And that belief was a self-fulfilling prophecy for me. From there, I went on through elementary school, and after he passed away, and was in learning disability lab, and just hated to ask questions. I felt stupid all the time. So those expectations set by my father set the course for me. Then some things happened in my life that gave me confidence. I graduated high school somehow and went off into the Army and got those kind of experiences, and then started school. But there were some people along the way who really believed in me. They saw things in me. I think they looked hard and were really encouraging. I remember a guy named Dick Olson, and Dick was, he taught me economics. He's the one who taught me this, that people start to seriously save for retirement when they're at age 50. I remember that so well because it's turned out to be relatively true. And he's a good teacher, but it was something that just connected with him. And I remember I was embarrassed because I got a B in his, he also taught business law. He had a law degree as well as an economics PhD. And I was in his office, and there were multiple choice tests. I was a great student in his class. I knew all the cases. I talked so much that I had to restrict myself. I felt like the other students would think I was a know-it-all or something, which is weird for me, but nonetheless, I didn't want to stick out like that. And I think he saw my embarrassment a little bit. And I remember he said something. To this day, it doesn't even completely make sense. He said, my son is really brilliant. He's off at, Dartmouth or whatever, some Ivy League school or something, studying engineering, something fancy and hard, biochemistry, physics, something. And I'm really proud of him. He's really, really smart. I thought, oh, great. And then he said, my daughter is brilliant, and she's at this school, and she's doing that. And I said, oh, that's great. And I got a B on his business law exam. And in just a moment, he looked at me and he said, if I could trade what you have for what my children have, I'd make that trade. I don't know really what he meant, but it impacted me deeply. It was a belief in me. He saw a value in me that others didn't, except my parents. And I wouldn't know how to express to you what that meant to me and what that meant to the course of my future. Maybe if I tell you that many years later, that was my undergraduate, and then so that was 3 years, and then two years of my master's, and then 4 years in my doctoral program. After all that, I looked him up. He was retired, and I had to do a little digging to find his home number. I called him, and I said, been a lot of years. I don't blame you if you don't remember me. He said he did. He was old at the time, but I believe him. And I said, I just called you to tell you that you made a difference in my life. You spoke into my life in a way that others weren't able to, and I just graduated with my PhD, and I don't think it would have happened if it weren't for you. So I just called to thank you. So genuinely believing in someone, not every belief that you have for someone's going to be so sentimental and such a kind story like that, but everywhere we can, we ought to look deep into a person and look for those areas of extravagantness and beauty. Also, one of the things I do is I just remember the many, many times that I was a miserable failure and someone believed in me, encouraged me, and I succeeded, even though I didn't look like I was probably a candidate for success. We all have many failures in our life. In fact, probably a lot of what we do in life would be counted as failures if you just stop the story right there. But we go on, we persevere. And part of what we need to persevere is we need people around us who believe in us. So I really love the Pygmalion Effect. I use it with my children who are grown now. I think it's very powerful. I think it's something that you can sew into the fabric of your own life, not just as a manager, but as a husband and a wife, and as a parent, and as a grandchild, and grandmother and father, just in all of our relationships. So I hope that's insightful for you. Thought it was worth expanding on a little bit. All right, next video coming up soon.